Okay, it's live.
Hello, everyone. How are you? I hope you're good. Good evening, good morning, Beijing time, good evening, Africa. I hope you're well, and I hope that you're safe despite the coronavirus. It's nice having you here, and welcome to the Africa Matters webinar series. I'm Nyokabi Waweru. I'll be your host for this evening, and I hope that everything is going to flow on well. So my name is Nyokabi Waweru. I'm from Kenya, but currently I'm living, studying, and working in China in education management and translation. My education background is in international relations and diplomacy, law, Chinese language and culture. And I'm passionate about African identity. I'm passionate about African diplomacy. I'm also passionate about youth advocacy program. I'm currently a co-founder and the president of the Youth Advocacy Program Africa. We are basically an organization that is seeking to bring together the African youth and awakening the African youth power in Africa without leaving out anyone, regardless of their geographical disposition, their education background, or their profession. We seek to bring every youth together as long as you're from Africa and you're an advocate for the African agenda, so that we can do this and so that we can make Africa great again. So welcome to this webinar series. And I hope we get to learn something, and I hope we get to grow together. So this evening, we're going to be talking about inequalities in education in Africa. And I'm going to start off by introducing education. And I'm going to start by saying the meaning of education, by telling you the meaning of education. Education is acquisition of knowledge. Well, and not only acquisition of knowledge, but acquisition of relevant knowledge. Education is the progression of knowledge, knowing what to do, how to do it, when to do it. So education is a gradual process. It brings changes to a person's life. It brings changes to life and behavior. That is what education is about. So there are two forms of education. There is the formal education, and there is the formal education and there is the informal education. The formal education is what we learn from school, what we get from education institutions. And the informal education is basically experience, life experience. So for the purposes of this webinar, we are going to concentrate more on the formal education, where we get this education from schools, tertiary centers, and such kind of things. So to start us off, going to explain what inequalities in education in Africa are. Inequalities in education in Africa is brought about by the unequal distribution of academic resources, which include, but are not limited to, funding, qualified teachers, and technologies. The situation in Africa is highly alarming. It's highly alarming when it comes to inequalities in education. We don't have a standard form level of education whereby, like in most countries in the world, or in most states in the world, like in China, for example, they have this standard form of education where, regardless of your material wealth, regardless of where you are at in this said state that is China, the education you get won't differ from another person. But that is not so in Africa. So that is why I think education is really, really, really important. And it's really important for the African youth and the African governments to make sure that we do not lag behind when it comes to improving our education centers, to improving our education policies. Because I believe that with proper education, we can cut down on a lot of social injustices that are happening to us in Africa and around the world. So, to that effect, the United Nations, the Sustainable Development Goal, the SDGs, the SDG number 4, it's about quality education. It's about education, because education is really, really important. Having people receive knowledge and open up their minds, it bridges the gap in social economic, it bridges the gap in governance, it bridges the gap in all forms of social injustice. So I'm going to go through the causes of education inequalities in Africa. And the most thrilling, I mean, the greatest cause of inequality in education in Africa is poverty. Africa, compared, to other states, to other continents, Africa is regarded as a poor continent. Well, some people might not agree with that, but I think our rural areas say something totally different. Education is supposed to be a basic need, but we are at a point where education in Africa, you get education in Africa in accordance to the money that you have, or in accordance to the material possession and wealth that you have. That is, it equates, the money that you have equates the education that you get in Africa, which should not be so. So poverty is the greatest contributor, is the greatest drive to the inequalities in education in Africa. Taking aside the legacy of, colonialism or ethnic inequalities in our continent, there is a very great disparity in the rural and urban school-going children, whereby that our rural-going, the kids from the rural areas, the school-going kids from the rural areas, they face more difficulties and more problems when it comes to acquiring education than their counterparts in the urban areas. This is brought about by a number of things. One, less qualified teachers, and two, there is a low teacher per school ratio. Currently, the primary school enrollment in Africa is estimated by UNESCO at around 80%, and so you can imagine large classrooms of kids with around 30, 45, or 50 kids, and maybe only one teacher. Let me give an example with the way we grew up going to school in my country, in Kenya. The primary schools, they're called the government schools. Yeah, the government schools, the ones that are not private funded, they are funded by the government. You'd find that the primary schools, we call them the primary schools in Kenya. Other countries call them grade 1, grade 2, to around grade 6 or grade 7. You'd find that one school every grade has several streams, 2 streams, 3 streams, and you'd find that maybe they all have one maths teacher. So the maths teacher goes to grade stream ABC, grade 2 stream ABC, grade 3 stream ABC, and the overload of the work brings about the issue where the teacher can't be effective to the kid. There is no teacher-kid relationship. The teacher is not able to identify which kid needs more help, which kid, needs more tuition, which kid needs more tuition, which kid needs, more attention. It is not easy for the teachers to identify that because they have so much overload. There are fewer teachers in the schools compared to the enrollment that is going on right now. And UNESCO also evaluates that currently Africa is having the highest number of primary school enrollment. So I think it would be nice if, the government gave something like incentives, to teachers who apply to teach in the rural areas, because I think that would, bridge the gap for the kids and, bring about higher employment rate for the teachers. in contrast, most rural areas are characterized by poor or non-existent infrastructure or no provisions for other social services, such as poor healthcare. When you're sick or when you're having issues with your health and you cannot access, proper healthcare, it's going to be really difficult for a child to attend school. So most kids, they'll stay at home, they won't go to school, they stay at home, and in a situation where they were supposed to go get medical attention, get the proper care that is required, and go back to school. So find most of these kids, because they don't have access to proper health care, they spend most of their times at home, waiting for maybe the headache to go away or the stomachache to go away or whatever it is that is ailing them. A situation that would have been easily cured with some tablets or some pills, a simple examination at a clinical center, and the kid goes back to school. And this is not so with most kids in urban areas or developed areas, or kids who attend private schools, or kids who attend these international schools. It's not the same. When that kid gets sick, maybe there is a school nurse or the parent is called, they take the kid to the hospital, he or she gets a diagnosis, gets the proper medication, and comes back to school. So poverty is the leading cause of inequalities in education in Africa. Well, this negatively impacts the quality of education, the cycle of dropping out, lack of motivation. I have figured out, I have researched and I have noticed that even when people are doing mentorship, the way people do mentorship for high schools, mentorship for primary schools, most of these mentors or most of these groups that have these mentorship courses or mentorship opportunities, most of them only go for mentorship, in schools around urban areas. It is very, very, very rare to find mentors going to those deep end rural areas. And I also realized that most kids in these rural areas, they don't have anyone to look up to. They don't have someone who succeeded and gone and who comes back to tell them, this is the way I did it, and this is the way you should do it. So they lack in motivation, they lack in mentors, they lack in role models to look up to. So putting that together with poor infrastructure, lack of academic technologies, lack of proper care at school, it's very easy for a kid to get demotivated, whereby the kid will only go to school because it's a Monday to Friday, we go to school. On Saturday, we stay at home. On Sunday, we go to church. And on Monday, we go to school, and the cycle continues. So to them, education doesn't become that, they don't have the motivation for continuing with education. They don't have the motivation for studying. They don't have the motivation to do whatever it is it's supposed to do to get them to a better place. So combine all these things together, the impacts are negative and the impacts are very vast. So that is why you find most kids, most early teenage pregnancies, actually, sorry to say this, they are from the rural areas, because there is no motivation whatsoever for anything. So if you feel unwell or your parents are not able to pay school fees, you just end up getting some manual jobs. And the next thing is that you get pregnant. And then when you're a teen mom, you become a teen mom. And sadly, I've also realized that this cycle continues. So a teen mom, and then another teen mom, and then it's a generation of teen moms, or sorry to use this particular word, a generation of uneducated parents. So you find that education is not really that important to these parents, because most of the parents, I've had them say that, I also didn't go to school and I've brought you up, I've done this and this and this. So you can also go look for a job. So you see, all these things put together, and the basis of everything, the foundation of all this is, poor infrastructure when it comes to education. So I think if we look at strategies and ways in which we can work this one out, we will have pulled Africa out of a very deep hole when it comes to education. We will have pulled Africa out of a very, very, very deep hole, and we will be able to make the necessary strides to continue with education the way we thought it's supposed to be, the way education is supposed to be, the way education was designed to be. The next thing that faces the next thing that contributes to inequality in education in Africa is low secondary and tertiary enrollment. This is whereby that in primary schools or kindergartens, like I mentioned earlier before, UNESCO estimates that the entry percentage of kids in primary school is at 80% right now. But when it goes to the tertiary institutions, the secondary school or the high school, the colleges, the universities, or other forms of training institutes, the number goes down. Like only 4 out of every 100 kids in Africa are expected to join college or universities, as compared to 36 out of every 100 kids in Latin America, or 14 out of every 100 kids in Western Asia. So you find that most kids just get the basic education, the counting, the ABCs, the 1 to 10, but the most important knowledge that one can get through education, the secondary school learning and the university level education, they do not acquire that. So they do not acquire the necessary skills to go out and become, job creators, to go out and become innovators, to go out and, become, think for themselves and do something good with their lives. So they just, they become dropouts, and that is a very wrong word to use, so I was told today, but they become dropouts, and the cycle, as I said before, the cycle continues, dropouts and dropouts and dropouts and dropouts. And this is because in most African countries, actually, right now, education, in as much as they say it's free, it's not really free. You have to, so education is free, but you have to contribute this amount for books, you have to contribute this amount for, I don't know what activities, you have to contribute this amount for this and this and this and this and this. And most parents are not in a position to do that. So if your parent is not in a position to pay your school fees and you can't get a job that can help you pay your school fees, so the next thing is you just drop out of school, you don't even attend a tertiary institution or a vocational training institution. So, and then that just goes to the wind. So you find that we have more job seekers than we have job creators in Africa. And it's making Africa, continue with the same cycles of being unable to fend for itself, being unable, to go forward on things that matter. Because in fact, only 30 to 50% of secondary aged children in Africa actually are attending school, while only 7 to 23% of the tertiary school-aged youth are enrolled. So another barrier to advancing primary to secondary education is the inability of the national institutions in Africa to ensure equity across geographical and gender boundaries. When I talk about geographical and gender boundaries, what comes to mind is disabled children. They are particularly at a disadvantage. I was carrying out a research sometimes back, around 2 or 3 weeks ago, about the disadvantaged children in Africa, the differently abled, not the disabled, the differently abled kids. And you find that most of these kids, they don't grow up knowing how to relate with other people. You see, there are schools for differently abled kids, but when you come into the world out here, we don't have jobs that are particularly for the differently abled kids. We don't have universities that are particularly for the differently abled kids. We don't have institutions, or we don't have workspaces that are particularly for the different abled kids. So our education system in Africa that provides for only the lowest form of education for these kids, you find that they go to the primary or kindergarten or secondary schools, and then after that, life becomes a little bit difficult for them. Life becomes a little bit hard for them because they don't know how to integrate with other people. They don't know how to connect with other people. They don't know what happens in the world out there because they have never lived in the world out there. So I think it is very important, even as our officials, our government officials form policies, to try and include policies that help integrate these differently abled kids into an education system that, one, helps them with who they are, helps them to, prepare themselves as human beings in the conditions that they're suffering from, and it also equips them to deal with the world out there with other people who are not having the issues that the able differently kids do have. So I think that is really important for the African governments, our education sectors to take that seriously and take that into account. Another issue that brings education inequality in Africa is gender inequalities. And when I talk about gender inequalities, I'm not only speaking about girls who go through early marriages or who drop out of school to take care of their families and anything. It also includes boys in some societies. There are societies where boys actually go to school up to a certain level, and then after that they are off, herding cattle or joining family businesses that, agri businesses and such kind of things. Mostly they just leave school and, they go and join, they become drug addicts or, such kind of things. This happens in our African cultures. We have cultures that are stopping the African agenda for education to go through, because there are cultures that believe education is not important. There are cultures that believe education is not important for girls. There are cultures that believe that education is not important for boys. And there are cultures that believe education is not important as a whole. And some of them, in as much as they would want to have that narrative changed, they do not have the resources to believe that. They do not have the resources to make that go through. Assuming you're living in a place where going to school is around 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers, and a small kid is supposed to walk to school 20 kilometers and back, there is a very high possibility the parent who sit, and especially if the parent has not had a form of education, formal or informal, it's very hard for that parent to see the sense or to see the importance of educating their kid. So they choose for their kids to go on a different path. Like, we are pastoralists, so you're going to herd cattle. You are mature enough, a lady, so the next option for you is to get married. So gender inequalities also plays a great role in inequalities of education in Africa. Sorry. So to address the African education crisis, the African governments must implement policies that, such as improving infrastructure, health, sanitation conditions, and modernizing the agricultural sector. It is very important to, educate the poor. It is in our interest to educate the poor. It is in our interest to educate them so that they can claim their space in the global market to develop home solutions. I want to talk about a story of a small boy, or now a grown adult man, that is told from Malawi. His name is William Kamkwamba. William Kamkwamba, his story is told in Malawi during the drought that had hit Malawi. He was not in a position to go to school. He did not have the proper resources. His parents could not pay for his school fees. So he spoke to his physics teacher, and he told his physics teacher that these are the issues I'm going through, but I would really like to continue studying. So the teacher would help him sneak into the physics class, into the physics lab. He would read and he would perform experiments, and through his reading, without the help of a teacher, personal efforts and personal reading, through the help of a teacher, Kamakwamba was able to, use his teachers. He used his teacher's bicycle actually, and he was able to create a water pumping turbine that gave water to his family and to the members of his community. Hence the story of the boy who harnessed the wind. The story of Kamkwamba shows me that, or puts in me that African kids and the African youth, they are really, really hungry for education. People want a change in education. People want a change in policies. But our geographical disposition, our material wealth, abilities, and where we are at really, really brings a hindrance to these things. And in as much as we cannot provide for everybody, in as much as if you're able, you cannot go providing for everybody else. It is very important for everybody to realize that we, as especially the upcoming African youth generation and the young adults, it is very important for us to realize that we owe Africa a duty. We owe Africa a duty to development without waiting for the government. We owe Africa a duty of advancement without waiting on aids from foreign governments or foreign organizations. It is good, but we also have to understand that it is up to us to go out there and, do something, to go out there and take action. We have to understand that it's up to us, in as much as we now realize these are the inequalities that are happening in Africa. This is what that is happening in Africa. It is not only enough for us to realize these things. It is not only enough for us to recognize these things. It is not only enough for us to talk about them, tweet about them, chat about them on Facebook or in our group conversations. That is not only enough. It is very important, equally important, that each and every one of us takes it as a personal role, takes it as a personal initiative to go and do something for Africa, to go and make a change for Africa, because we are not going to wait upon anyone else to come and do that for us. And we cannot continue waiting for the government. The African government, as we know it right now, is of the generation before us. And there is something I've been telling the people we work with in the youth advocacy program, that time is gone where we are only blaming the government. Oh, we would do this if the government did this. This would be better if the government did this. The policies we have right, or the constitutions that we have right now, gives us a leeway into advancement of these agendas. There is a way in, if you feel this is not right, there is a way in which you can go about it correctly. Write and have bills tabled in Parliament, or there is something to do. There is something to do. There is something to do. You can go out there and do something. We don't only have to wait for the government to, because currently everybody is complaining. The government is corrupt. The resources kept for education is not getting to the rural areas. The government policies are not in line with the education sector. These and these and these and these and these. But I realized that everybody has a role to play. Everybody has something to do. And one thing that encourages me is that when I see the way the youth of Africa are rising right now, it encourages me, because I know these are going to be the next presidents. These are going to be the next ministers of education. These people are going to be the next cabinet secretaries, they're going to be education experts. And if we start doing something right now, if we start setting the pace right now, if we start having discussions right now, if we start doing the little action, little by little right now, by the time we get to the place where we want to be in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, Africa will have changed, because we have everything at our disposal. If you go out there in these other countries, the best, I was giving an example that actually when you go to a place like the United States, the best doctors come from Nigeria. if you go to a place like in China, the best experts come from, you know, Kenya, Zimbabwe. The best experts are from Africa. When you go to these countries that are developed, the best experts they have do come from Africa, which shows that actually Africa has the brain power. Africa has the ability to go out and do these things. All we have to stop thinking is that we have to wait on the government or we have to wait on foreign aid, you know, to make these things happen, to realize these things, or, you know, to bring these things to realization. We have to understand that we are in a position, we have been equipped right now to make things work for us. We have been equipped right now to go out there and make a difference, because the generations after us, the younger generation, the generation that is coming after us, is expecting us to do things better. It's expecting us to do things in a better way. And so the education that we have acquired, the formal education that we have acquired, should set pace for us to go out there, bring groups together, bring other African youths together, you know, and go out there and do something. Go out there and form small organizations or big organizations. Go out there and have this voice heard. Because if the current governments know that they are being held accountable by people, if they know that someone is going to hold them accountable somewhere for some kind of, for you know, for whatever it is, if they're not dispersing the funds that they're supposed to disperse, or they are not implementing the policies that are supposed to implement, if they know that they are going to be held accountable, it's going to be very easy for them to start working right. So the inequalities, the inequalities in education in Africa, poverty is the greatest contributor, is the greatest drive, and there is gender inequalities, there is lack of
Hi everyone, it seems that Nyokabi has, her network has gone down. If there's any questions, please switch on your mic and ask, then we can just continue the discussion while we wait for her to get back. Does anyone have a question or just want to add to what Nyokabi was saying? But I must just add, like, just a bit of continuation on what Nyokabi was saying. I think it's also important for us for organizations to call onto government to say we need proper infrastructure in our schools on the continent. We need quality education and infrastructure. Nyokabi's back, so she'll just continue her chat from here on.
of colonialism on the continent and the quality of education. Years after colonialism has ended, why are there still disparities in the quality of education in Africa? I think that one of the reasons why there are disparities in the quality of education in Africa is that there is less investment in education. If we look at our current government policies on education, or the involvement of government in education, you'll find that even when for example, when they're getting the money that, or the loans that they're getting from foreign aids, less of that money is scheduled to go to education. there is very, very little or no investment in education policies, or investment in education trainings and trainings for teachers. Like, you find that our training institutions for teachers is not in a good state. And then the trainings that they get, it's not something that you'd look. I was comparing to the training of teachers in a place like China, where I'm doing my research. These people go through vigorous training as teachers, and on a daily basis, especially the teachers from kindergartens and primary schools. On a daily basis, they have to go through meetings and trainings. Every day, they have to give an account of what happened in their classrooms, and they have to say what they did that was not good, or what they realized that they could change, and what they realized that they could do better. There is so much accountability in these places than there is in our African countries. So I think there is very, very little investment. And this is a point that we should all consider when you're doing something, when you're going out in our organizations, or when you're going to talk to, our government officials or our education experts, to make sure that there is more involvement of people, and the realization, people realize that education is really, really important. The formal education is really important. I don't think Africa has gotten to that place where people take education really, really seriously. People think are more focused on agriculture, which is okay because that is the backbone of our continent. And people are more focused on other things minus education. They're more focused on making money minus education. And I also think that cultural beliefs also are an issue when it comes to the disparities in education in Africa. Cultural beliefs are an issue. Also, there is no system of cohesion, totally no system of cohesion between the government and education centers. Like I take, for example, the education experts in my country, the education organization in my countries, or the teachers' unions, they're always at loggerheads with government. The government didn't pay, or there were some things that were supposed to be implemented, they weren't implemented, and they're always at loggerheads. Because in as much as we might want to go out there and do something, we have limitations. We as the common people, we as the common citizens, we as the common netizens, we have some limitations. So there is a role of the government, and then there is our role. And I believe that if the government would play their role the way they're supposed to, it would become very easy for the rest of us to play our roles the way we are supposed to. So the other question was about, the other question was about, yes, the phrase that the best education can be bought by money. And it is actually very familiar among Africans. What do we think about free education? What do we think about free education in Africa? Do we think it's attainable? And what do we think the impact would be? I, for one, think that free education in Africa is attainable. If you look at the current free education in Africa, most countries have actually implemented the free education, well, for primary level, and some, like Tanzania, for the secondary school level, the free education has also been implemented. What we should be concerned about, and what we should actually be looking into, it's not the free part of the education, but how much value is that free education? Because if they say the education is free and the teachers are not enough, or whatever it is that is being studied in school is totally not right. Once again, I cite my country, and it's not that I'm not patriotic, I'm very patriotic to my country, but you realize that our colonizers were the British colonizers. So the education system that we had was from a British descent. And there was a way in which, before the new constitution that we have right now, there was a way in which our country was, the way other countries are divided into districts and provinces, and our country was divided into provinces. But currently the division is totally different. But if you go to the books that the kids in the primary schools are using right now, you'll find that, for example, before we were using provinces. We had 8 provinces in Kenya, but right now it's counties, 47 counties, and then we have constituencies, and yes, that. But you'll find in an exam paper, a kid is being asked, name the provinces in Kenya. It's totally irrelevant. It's not even relevant to what is going on in our country, Kenya, right now. And the same, I was reading a report that was written by a student from Nigeria on the same, and another one from Uganda. And they were stating that the education that their country is providing, the education system in their country is totally irrelevant. And some of these things have been passed by time. They're totally not irrelevant to our current, to what is happening around the world currently. And I think that, yes, it would be attainable. Free education in Africa would be attainable. But then people have to be willing to work. And for free education to work, it means that well, the government is playing its part, whereby they disperse the resources that are required, technological resources, academic resources, and making sure that the teachers are paid, making sure that the schools are running efficiently, there are enough desks or seats, or if the school is providing like the food program, make sure that the food program is being provided, and on all days that are school days. Not you find on Monday the kids have food, on Tuesday or Wednesday the kids don't have food, on Thursday, a certain consistency. Yes, that would mean that the education is working. And also technologies, and making sure that the rural areas and the urban areas, they don't have inconsistencies when it comes to provision or acquiring of education. I also think it would work. I also think but it would require a lot of work. It would really require a lot of work, and it would require a lot of the youth and the government and the education bodies coming together and having discipline, that this is what we want to do for our country, this is what we want to do for Africa, and people actually going out in discipline and actually achieving that. And this would mean that the government is less on corruption, because most of the money or resources that is set to improve our education sector ends up in scandals and ends up lost. Yeah, it happens in Africa. Money just gets lost. And I think that if the government was a little bit serious about this, or even if the citizens held the government accountable, if the government knew that the citizens were holding them accountable, it would really be possible. And I think if free education was really possible, free and valuable education, free education and education that is going to be quality education was available, I think it would be really a great step for Africa, because this means that the kids in the marginalized areas, the kids from poor families, the kids who don't have guardians to pay their school fees, each and every one of those kids was going to get an education from the kindergarten level to the primary school level to the secondary school level. And a kid who completes the secondary school, their knowledge on the matters of the world and their personal experience and the way their cognitive abilities have grown. So it is very easier for that kid to make something out of themselves than just a kid, who completed primary school and didn't do anything else with their lives. So yes, I think it's attainable, but it's going to require a lot of work. It's going to require a lot of discipline. It's going to require a lot of accountability on the part of the government, and it's going to require a lot of pushing on the side of the citizens. What I know is that it is possible for us as Africans, it is possible for us as the youths, as the young adults, to push the government to do these things. So I think everybody has a role in which they should play to make sure that this happens. Let's stop saying that everybody for himself and God for us, or I don't know who came up with that quote, but every time I think about that quote in relation to the development of Africa, it's like it's a wound. It's like a wound. It pains like a wound, because I know the moment that we think, as long as it's not my issue right now, so then I really don't care about it. When we stop caring about these things, we might think that it doesn't affect us. But what is happening in the marginalized areas, the failure of that area to grow is the failure of our country to grow. And the failure of one country to grow is the failure of Africa as a whole to grow. And so we will remain the same people, believing that we have to get aid, foreign aid, or believing that, let me do today, and then tomorrow comes, I do what I'm supposed to do tomorrow, and then the other day comes. It also calls for us to be accountable. It also calls for us to do what it is that we're supposed to do. So the next point was, oh yes, before I forget, because it is attainable, and it would also bring us a step closer to building bridges in social and economical developments. So yes, I believe it's attainable. Yeah, and also someone was asking a question of what if we stopped relying on the government? Yeah, well, to some extent, we can say that we can do this by ourselves, but it is also going to require some part of the government. It's going to require the government to play a certain role. Yes, we can do these things by ourselves. We can make sure that cohesive policies are implemented, or we can come up with these policies. We can come up with these education policies that makes sure that no child is left behind when it comes to education. And then we can push these policies we make sure that the people concerned, the people who are concerned with the education sectors in our countries, they follow these things to a T. Yes, we can do that. But if we just sit down and wait for the government to do everything, it's going to be a while before we are in the government, and so that we can do something by then. So yes, I think free education in Africa is attainable. And if it is attainable, it will be a step in the right direction. And I think it will be a good dawn for education in Africa. And also, I usually say that educating our society will help reduce a lot of social injustices. As I think what would happen if we educated our society such that they know that FGM is not okay. People realized that discriminating people on, basis of ethnic backgrounds or their races is not okay. People realizing that the climate, we need to do something to make sure that the climate does not go on deteriorating. But this can only happen with an education, when people are educated. And this is where both formal and informal education come to play together. So that you talk to people about these things, you talk to people about good governance, you educate the masses about good governance. And so people know that we just don't elect someone because they come from a tribe or because they come from a town. We don't just elect someone because they provided $10 to each and everybody of us. This is what good governance, because these people have learned, especially the people in the rural areas. People should learn, this is what good governance looks like. This is what good governance can do. And so even when we go to voting for leaders, they're not only pushed by leaders who, flaunt big cars, or they give them, money, or, promises, fake promises, and people are able to determine by themselves, is this person a good leader? Is this person going to do whatever it is going to be required of them to do? Can this person achieve the goals that we want to set as a country? So yes, education is very, very important in that aspect. And so I believe if that happens, if free education happens, then we will be in for a very, very big win. The other point is at the dawn of independence, incoming African leaders committed to prioritizing education on their agendas. Whether this has made an impact or not, it varies from country to country. In some countries, the leaders are trying, and in some countries, it still remains the greatest problem. And I think Africa as a whole has one issue, especially and I think this is something that we should really look into on a serious note. The marginalized areas, and the poor people, the poor rural areas, because not everybody in the rural areas is poor. The people in the rural areas who are, their economical background is a little bit low. These people, they don't get the quality education that they're supposed to get. The government promises, the government promises at every, campaigns, their campaigns, and after or before the election, the government officials, they promise, oh, we're going to provide good education, we are going to provide sustainable education for our country, we are going to provide these, we're going to provide these. And once again, I quote my country, Kenya. The sitting president right now, when they were coming in, they promised some laptops to kids in primary schools. Yeah, well, it's been a couple of years and that is yet to be realized. So I think the leaders committed through the word of mouth, but I think when it comes to realization of everything that they commit to doing, it's either slow or really does not happen. And this is why educating the masses on issues of voter education, yes, voter education. When we educate the masses on what good governance looks like and on what it is we're supposed to do, or making them know that we can hold our leaders accountable, that if a leader is not doing whatever it is they're supposed to do, we have a constitutional obligation, or I mean, they have a constitutional obligation and we have a right to tell them to bring them to, have them impeached or have them, resign from their seats, so that we can have someone who is doing something. So, but our governments know that Africans are not going to hold them accountable, sorry to say. So they just, promise us through the word of mouth. We are happy with the words of the mouth, but when they get into office, they really do whatever it is that they promised that they will do. They really do whatever it is that they are supposed to do. So I don't really think if you look at most African countries from the time they gained independence and with the current globalization, if you compare the two things and look at our education sector, I really think African education sector could do better. I really think African education sector could do better. And I also really, really have a dream whereby that one day our African kids won't have to go to, Harvard or UCLA or, University of Wisconsin or Essex University in England or universities in Australia or universities in China, to be considered elite. I have a dream that one time that our African universities or our higher institutions of learning are going to provide education that is going to be sustainable, such that we don't have to go out there and look for better education. We will have better education within us. But that it's going to take a lot of, as I said, a lot of discipline, a lot of accountability from our side and also from our government side. So I don't think the implementation has been done. I still think there is a very, 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 very long way to go, but it is my dream and I still have hope. When I see the way the youths are rising, it gives me hope that maybe it's only this year, maybe things from next year are going to change, or maybe it's only this month, from next month things are going to change. Because the current group of youths in Africa, I included, are hungry for change. Hungry for change in governance, hungry for change in development, hungry for change, eradicating the poverty levels in Africa. They're hungry for change in every dimension. So I believe, even though the government before or the current governments have not fully implemented the education strategies that they said that they would implement, well, it's time we stopped blaming them. And it's time we started doing whatever we can do right now, as I said before, and wait for we are going to be the leaders in the next 2 years, 3 years. We're going to be the presidents, the cabinet secretaries, the ministers of education and whatnot. And then it's up to us, having learned and having seen how Africa is being left behind, that I think that will give us more vigor or more zeal to, do everything we possibly can to make Africa go to a place where it's supposed to be. Because I believe that Africa doesn't actually need foreign aids. We have everything we need. Well, the borrowing between countries, cannot just cease. But I believe we do not need foreign aid to have education that is sustainable in Africa. We can do that by ourselves. We are in a position to implement that without having to ask for foreign aids. We just have to set out and actually set out to implement that and set out to do that. The other one is approaches that would be most effective when attempting to decrease the disparities of education in Africa. I think the approaches that would be most effective is policies. Policies are very, very important. You know, good education policies are progressive policies formulations. This is, when I talk about policies, I want to talk about our education system. What are our students learning in school? What are they being taught? How is the education in your country? You know, what are the kids learning in school? Are they learning something that is of value, or are they just going through school to get an A and then go to campus and, you know, come out with honors? You know, are we cramming for exams? Our kids cramming for exams, or are our kids really attaining a kind of are they attaining information? I admire other continents, America, the United States of America, and then there is a country like Asia. A country like China in Asia. I really admire the way their education programs run. Like, I'll take, for example, like a kindergarten in China, especially the international kindergartens. You find that kids in kindergartens, those are kids between 2.5 years to around 6 years. They are not only constricted to math and English and social studies or sciences. They are more open to other things like theater, arts, music. What else is it that you're interested in? What is it that you are interested in? And so you find that the kids are not only limited to the ABCs and the 1s to 10s, they're gaining other information, they're gaining another form of education alongside the ABCs and the 1s to 10s. So when this kid continues, let's say, for example, a kid starts learning maybe the piano or the organ or, whatever, or theater or music, starts learning how to sing from kindergarten. This is what happens when they have other skills other than 1 to 10 and A to Z. When they get to a higher learning institution, they increase that knowledge. So when this kid graduates from campus, they have their certificates and then they have other skills. So they are able to become, to stop, waiting for job opportunities, and running to newspapers and looking, is there a job application? What job can I apply and what not? They are able to sit and think, I have this and I have this. And I have also been taught to think for myself. I've also been taught to, do these things by myself. So I can go out there and become innovative. I can go out there and and become a job creator, not a job seeker. So I believe that education policies are really, really important, and implementing educational policies that are relevant to the world right now, are relevant to what is happening, because the world is growing. Where the world was at 10 years, it's not where it is right now. Even the UN agreed. They had to change the Millennium Development Goals to the Sustainable Development Goals because they realized that the goals that they had, or the goals that they had set, or the things that they wanted to achieve, the world was growing really fast and things were changing overnight. Things were changing every millisecond. So they realized that they also have to include some other things and they have to add on other things. They realized that things have to change. And so we have also to realize that even in our education sectors, we need to really, really improve what our kids are learning in school, what our kids are being taught. We also have to look at, is it relevant to the current, is it relevant to the current world? Is it relevant to what is happening around? So yes, and I think government, when the government implements these policies, that is going to take us to a higher level, and it's going to take us to the next step of having sustainable education in Africa, which I believe is really, 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 really important. And I believe that we can also attain it. So I hope and I wish that each and every one of us is going to go out there and do what it is that is required of them to bring Africa to where it is supposed to be in education, and to help Africa attain sustainable education, because it is possible. It is really possible when you don't just shut our eyes and wait for the government. When you go out there, push the government if we have to, or we go out there and do things voluntarily. I call it innovative volunteerism. You just, do whatever it is that you're supposed to do. Play your part as an African youth. Play your part as an African youth, and you're going to do whatever it is that can be done. So thank you so much for attending the session. And it was an honor relating with you. It's an honor reading the comments. It's nice learning from you and the questions. I hope I have answered all the questions. I hope I have answered all the questions. I don't think I have left anything out. And if I have, I don't think I've left anything out. So I hope we have a changed perception, and I hope that we have a changed mind. And I hope that we realize that, as the slogan for the African Matters Initiative goes, we are the ones that we've been waiting for. I hope that we realize we don't have to sit down and wait for the government. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I hope that I'll see you out there making a difference. Thank you for attending this session, and thank you for listening to me. Thank you very much. God bless Africa, and have a wonderful evening. Goodbye.